Now, it's been about 60 years since a small metal sphere, about the size of a basketball, was launched into orbit around the Earth, ushering in the space age. Sputnik1, the world's first artificial satellite, took to the skies on October 4th, 1957. It was launched by the former Soviet Union, and as well as kicking off the space race, it also kicked off the Cold War. Well, for more on this, I'm now joined in the studio by today's Live on Live guest, Valeria Pettorino, who's an astrophysicist and data scientist at the CosmoStat laboratory, which is a research group which is based at Saclay Nuclear Research Centre, the CEA, near Paris. Thank you for being on the program today.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone.
Now, history changed when the Soviets successfully launched Sputnik1, the world's first artificial satellite. So just to get us started, can you describe for us exactly what its launch meant for the world?
It was a great day and a great year at that time. It was really the first artificial object satellite that was put into orbit around Earth by men, by the human beings. And that was seen as science fiction at that time.
So what exactly was its mission, and did it accomplish its mission?
Well, it did, in the sense that its main mission was to really achieve this. So to actually show that it was possible to send an object in space and to put it in an orbit and to even study a little bit the atmosphere and to map Earth for the first time from space.
And how long did it last? I mean, how long was it up there for? I mean, all of the build-up to sending an object into space, into orbit. Both the US wanted to do it first, the USSR. But how long did it actually last?
It actually lasted only for a couple of months, a few months, until the January, as forecasted, actually, because the orbit just shrinks until it gets destroyed in the atmosphere of Earth. So a very, very sad ending, but for like opening up the history of space science.
Yeah, its legacy lives on, even if the satellite itself didn't last so long. I mean, it happened a long time ago. It was 60 years ago. How long did it actually take to orbit the Earth? Do you remember?
So it was about 1 hour and a half to go around Earth, and at a distance, say from Earth, maximum distance of about 1,000 kilometers. So I would say the distance from Paris to Nice, but just going up.
Oh, isn't that fascinating? Yeah, isn't that fascinating? So when Sputnik1 was launched, many people around the world, particularly in the US, they were panicked because this launch was seen as a security threat. The Soviets had shown that they had superior technology, if you like, specifically the guidance technology to insert a payload into orbit. Technology that could potentially be used to direct a warhead. The launch caught the US off guard. Can you explain how significant a technical achievement this was at that time for the Soviets?
Yes, so this is really an interesting story in the sense that it connects history and politics and science at the same time. It had actually started a few years before when there was a sort of open call for artificial satellites to be launched in that specific year, which was a good year to observe and map the Earth because of solar emissions. And there had been several proposals, including the US, the year before had announced from the White House that they would have launched a satellite. And instead, what happened was that the Soviet Union launched it first, with Sputnik first, and it was about 10 times the actual weight that had been planned by the US. So it was much, much bigger. And that was also contributing to having an impact in the image that of this achievement. So it was the first achieved by men. It was much bigger than the one planned by the US. Which actually at the end didn't work out. They had another one the year afterwards. And so in this sense, it helped to increase the race and a bit maybe within the competition of US and the Soviet Union to reinforce investments in these directions and then have many more achievements that brought us to the moon.
So it's interesting you should say it was much bigger because Sputnik1 was the size of a basketball, and I have the weight written down here. It weighed 83.6 kilograms. So I wonder how much did they intend it to, how big did they intend it to be?
It was meant to be 10 times smaller, the original Vanguard
size of a
project.
tennis ball, maybe. That's interesting. So you mentioned there about what Sputnik1 and this desire to put a satellite into orbit did for science. I mean, the desire for the US and the USSR to outperform one another, it did prove to be quite beneficial for the progress of science and research. So, first of all, can you tell us about some of the other feats or firsts, if you like, to come out of the space race and how science has benefited from all of that?
Yeah, right afterwards there were a few more achievements actually by the Soviet Union in bringing the first man and the first dog, actually first, Laika, and then the first man.
That was Sputnik 2, wasn't it? The first
yes,
dog in space.
Just not long afterwards. And the first man and then the first woman in space. And then this, of course, also led to the actual formation of, in the US, of NASA just 1 year afterwards, to increase investments and unify agencies for space missions. And this is something that at the end it's the start of a wide variety of space satellites which have been financed since then by NASA and in Europe by ESA, the European Space Agency, to achieve a variety of scientific goals.
Now, these days, thousands of satellites orbit the Earth. They're used for observation, also for commercial uses, educational uses, and communication uses. Who launches satellites these days, and how easy or how costly is it to get a satellite up into orbit?
So these days, the launching an artificial satellite is not science fiction anymore. In fact, it can be NASA, it can be ESA, but it can even be almost private groups, which have first, I think just a few years ago, sent, say, the first first satellite in space.
So pretty much anyone can send a satellite up there?
Anyone who is quite rich.
Anyone who has the money. Okay, so it's costly.
It is, well, costly with respect to what I might earn, say, but with respect to many other things that we invest money in, perhaps it's not so costly. But this is basically at the start of telecommunication and navigation and GPS. And all the things, I don't know, weather forecast or control, or for example, sea and earth navigation, which we use now like every day, also in our daily life.
That we very much take for granted, all made possible thanks to satellites. Now, this brings me to the question of space junk. There are over 2 million kilograms of metal circling the Earth. These are figures I got off the internet. Millions of artificial objects in orbit, which pose safety problems for spacecraft and for satellite. Now, this galactic waste is essentially debris that's been left behind by human activity within the Earth's orbit. How bad is the problem, and what's being done to clean up this space junk?
So yes, there's many, and at some point this will become a problem. But I think at the moment space is big enough. And in a way, lots of of missions which are sent at the moment or planned. Even the one for which I'm actually currently working on is planned to be launched much farther away, actually, than the orbits that Sputnik could have 60 years ago.
Okay, so reducing the possibility that your satellite might crash into another one.
We are able at the moment, already since a few years, to really launch satellites even farther and to investigate things which are and collect data that come from much, much farther away than actually our even solar system. So we've gone a long way from 60 years ago.
Deep space comparatively. We'll have to leave it there. My thanks there to Valeria Pettorino, an astrophysicist at the CosmoStat laboratory here in Paris. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.